Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of March 15th. We are still operating under the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. As a result of that order, we will be doing all votes by roll call. Just a reminder, after I do the opening count, I've got a few announcements and then we'll be moving on to Jim. So taking the roll, Denny.
Yes, present.
Josette.
Yes. Question, is Lisa here?
Yes, I saw Lisa.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Allie?
Yes.
Andrew?
Here.
Steve?
Here.
Susan?
Here.
Jeff?
Here.
Kathleen?
Here.
Lucy?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Doug?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Lisa?
Here.
And myself, 14 in attendance. Just a reminder to everyone that we are recorded by Walpole Cable. We sometimes are live, we are sometimes rebroadcasted, and to such point, it is not our official record, but it is open to the public. So I just remind everybody to be mindful of what's on the agenda and being respectful to our guests and to our fellow board members. And I believe Allie would like to say a word or two.
Thank you, Mark. I just wanted to make a quick comment that last week during discussion, I allowed a personal comment to come in and I just, I want to apologize for that, but I wanted to just thank Mark for giving me the opportunity to say something quick.
Thank you. Jim, you wanted to give a quick update?
I believe you all received the memo that I provided last week covering Articles 15, 2, 3, 4, 12, and 13. We're on for Thursday night with the school department. Bridget and I are just finalizing a memo that will be out to you folks probably, I'm hoping, by the end of business tomorrow. It also includes a quick update on the animal control officer budget. We are just about finalizing an agreement with the town of Norwood to do like a regional ACO where the employee will be the town of Norwood's employee. We'll pay them just as we do with the veterans. The veterans, the town of Medfield pays us and he serves as their veterans agent. It'll be the same way here. We're going to have coverage, 2 people right now between the 2 towns. So it's we're making some good progress on that thing. It's a tough position to fill, and I'm glad Norwood is willing to help us out with that. So with that, I know Mark Gallivan, Gene Kinney, and Tamara Green are here to discuss the Walpole Media Corp budget. Just to get you started, right now there's a balance of $1,272,046 in that account. And if you're okay, Mark, I'll hand it off to Walpole Media Corp.
Thank you very much. So Article 15, Walpole Media budget for the fiscal year 2022. Who wants to take the lead? Mark?
Nope, I am Tamara Green. I'm the executive director. Hi, everyone. In your packet, you have our budget. $430,923.60 is the operating budget. Our capital budget is $169,671.53. This is slightly less than last year's budget. Before I get into any specifics or answer any questions, I just want to point out a few things. First, our revenue comes from as I'm sure you all know, the number of basic cable subscribers. We're not funded by taxpayer dollars, and we have zero impact on the town's budget. We carry programming over 3 channels. We use the acronym PEG, which stands for those 3 channels: public, education, and government. And you can see us on Comcast Channel 8 and Channel 31 for the public channel, Comcast Channel 12 and Verizon 29 for the education channel, and Comcast 22 and Verizon Channel 30 for the government channel. So we are underspending this year compared to last year's budget. That's mostly due to COVID. We weren't able to do as many of the programs that we had wanted to. But I can get into any specifics or answer any questions you have about our operating or our capital budget.
Any questions? The one I wanted to follow up on real quick was on the capital side. there were several projects that got completed this year, which unfortunately we haven't had the opportunity to take the benefit of. We actually have a new finance committee room at Town Hall that has remote cameras now set up in it. The old finance committee room, which will become a general meeting room, has robotic cameras, so it can be run remotely. And was there an upgrade scheduled for this coming year on the main meeting room?
No, the main meeting room is 100% up to date.
It's up to date already. Okay. Alrighty. Other questions, comments? I got Andrew.
Hi. I first wanted to just say how deeply appreciative and pleased I feel, and I know a lot of people share it, with what Walpole Media has done during the pandemic. It's been huge. Just in your memo here, the highlights from the last year or so are just really impressive. So just thank you for all the work you do, Tamara, and the whole team there, and our other guests tonight. So I just had one quick question, just as a general understanding of the overview of the operating budget history. You gave us a table with the last 3 years of data, and it seems that the total budget has gone down from 525,000 to 431,000. But the main mechanics of that decline, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to understand it, is that payroll has gone up a lot, which is great. You've hired more people to work. But the donations, the payment in lieu of rent, has gone down by over $200,000. Help me, and maybe I just need my memory jog. Maybe we've gone over this before. I apologize, but help remind me, what is the donation payment in lieu of rent?
Yes, so we are located in the high school. We don't pay any rent. So in return, what we do every year is we try and complete projects or pay for things at the school. So in FY20, that donation payment in lieu of line item was $245,000. The vast majority of that was to install all new lights in the auditorium. In FY21, it was $76,000. That was, we pay 20% of the media teacher's salary. We also pay for the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite for all of the computers in the TV production room, as well as all of the computers in the art and film class. And we also, some of that money in the donation in lieu of rent was to pay for equipment that the students use. This year, we have only spent so far $22,000, which is for the reimbursement for the teacher salary and the Adobe Creative Cloud renewal, as well as some equipment that the students use. While that number has gone down, I want to say that our capital for what we're doing for the town has increased significantly. I can go into that, but I don't know if you have a follow-up question.
No, this was just to understand the budget. I think what you've done for the town is more than made up for that. I think you're doing great, fantastic. I just wanted to better understand it. So keep up the great work. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you.
Kathleen and then Josette.
Mine's going to be a little redundant after Andrew, but I just wanted to say how much I appreciated. My mom was with me during COVID. We did exercises together through the Council on Aging. I went to church on Sunday with you people. So I appreciate that. One thing that jumped out at me was just the fire retardant curtain in the Murphy room. And I just wonder if you can tell me what that's about.
Absolutely. So as you alluded to, we've really tried to make sure that the seniors in town are remaining active. So we cover their morning exercise programs. That's held in the Murphy room. And if you can envision it, there's a stage, and behind the stage is a series of glass panels. And when the light shines through, you can't see the face of the instructor. So we will be paying for that curtain, which is a fire retardant curtain, but it will help us with our programs.
Thank you.
Josette, and then Brian.
All right, I'm going to be redundant. I'm involved with the COA, and I really want to give kudos to you and your whole team prior to and during the pandemic, because your leadership Your availability is greatly appreciated. And there are so many seniors that are shut in that if it wasn't for Cablevision, they would not have access to anything. So thank you so much for doing the great job that you're doing. And as you continue, thank you.
Thank you. If I can take just a,
Sure.
I'm sorry, are there any more questions?
There's a couple, but you
Okay,
can.
no, you go.
Okay. Brian and then Mark.
Through you, Mark. Similar to the others, I just want to say thank you. What a great asset you are to the town, and how you've increased your coverage over the last year by almost 200 hours, which is very impressive, and how you've been able to tape rec league basketball games so parents could see their children playing at a time when they wouldn't have been able to. So things like that, it's really appreciated. I do have one question. I do see how you're airing church services for a few of the congregations in town. Is there any plans to include other congregations in town in that?
Yes, at the beginning of the pandemic, I reached out to every church. These three are the ones who followed up, but I am more than happy. Any church that, any religious institute, I should say, who wants us to air their programs, we would be more than thrilled to do so.
Okay, great. Thank you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark.
I have two questions. The first one is, I noticed the purchase of a robotic system for the high school. I'm curious as to what that is.
We installed robotic cameras and a switcher system in the auditorium that will allow us, for example, to cover town meeting with, there are now 6 cameras in there. Before, we had to bring cameras into the auditorium. We had to have people man those cameras. Now we can do everything from our control room with the joystick to operate the cameras. And we only need 2 people involved. So it will help us with our production of events in the auditorium. I know that the media teacher is also using that as a training tool for the students. We will be doing the same thing in the gymnasium. That's one of our goals for this year, to install a robotic system in the high school gymnasium.
Is there are these cameras always on? Is there a privacy issue?
They're not, they're only on when we turn them on.
Okay. And again, since you don't cost the town anything, you are my favorite department that comes before us. But I'm just curious, from an audit standpoint, is it the town that audits your expenses, or does the state or the communication, does someone go through your books each year and make sure your payments are consistent within what your charter is?
Yes, we have hired, we hired an outside firm who is our CPR accounting firm.
Okay, thank
They
you.
file all of the state regulated files.
Great, thank you, Mark.
Lisa.
Thank you. What's the process, Mark, for getting recognized?
There's in the participant menu, you can do the raise hand. And it actually recognizes everybody in order as you raise your hand.
Thanks.
Okay.
Tamara, thanks for being here. I will echo the chorus. Big fan of the services you provide. Through Destination Downtown, we've had a high school intern come and work with us, and I have been worried that we were taking up a lot of his time. And I'm pleased to see you have an intern budget line item. Can I ask how many interns you have, and how are they chosen, and are they all high school kids, or?
Every semester is different for students. So we had a high school, actually we had a college intern who helped us with the fall sports coverage. We do have one paid intern now who is helping us. He's at the high school with Destination Downtown. He is very interested in news. And so no, you're not taking up too much of his time. He absolutely loves doing it. But the intern budget is not just for high school students, it's for college students, it's for anyone who is interested in interning. Traditionally, an intern is someone who gets class credit, who is a student, but we're a little bit more liberal with those rules. So we have a number of students who help us with high school sports coverage. We had some alums come and help us with Friday night's football game, for example.
Okay, so your interns, are they all just paid by the hour?
They are, right.
Yeah, and you have the number that you need, or are you constantly looking for more?
Absolutely looking for more.
Mhm. And how do you find them? Are you working with Mr. Allen at the high school?
Right now we're working with a number of different people. For example, we're working with Tech, the Education Cooperative, and I just got notified today that there's someone who wants to intern with us. Before the pandemic started, we did reach out to the high school and their internship program. And then once the pandemic hit, we put that on hold, but we're starting up again, and we will reach out to Mr. Allen.
I do feel that that's really a great example of community outreach, that, you know, you're not only getting the church services and exercise classes and business spotlights to the community, but then you're bringing in students who really want to know how to do this work, and you're even paying them, which they deserve to be paid, because the quality we're getting from this high school student has been fantastic. So great, that's great. I guess maybe breaking down at some point the payroll between staff, freelance, and interns would be helpful. But great job, thank you.
If you're interested in that, I can break that down right now if you're.
I'm good.
Okay.
Good.
Mark, is your hand up from before, or you got another question?
Sorry, Mark, I forgot to take it down.
Okay. I don't see any other questions. I just had a couple of quick questions on the capital program.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a fiscal year 2022 capital plan for 29,000-ish. What's actually involved in that line item?
I'm sorry, say that one more time. What was the last part?
The first item under your capital budget plan is a $29,000 line item, and just says capital plan for 2022.
Yes. That is equipment for the studio.
Okay.
Everything from some green screen backdrops and portable teleprompters, for example, that we will use, that some of the students will use as well.
Okay, so that's an equipment line, and the other ones are more of a technical nature.
Right.
Okay. On the infrastructure to connect Jarvis Farm and the 1A fields, is that a factor of running cable lines from your studio directly to those facilities, or are you able to tap into existing Fios and Comcast and use their infrastructures just in case of getting the cameras in those locations?
I will tell you that is a project that we will be funding. We were asked by the town administrator. So he probably could give you a little bit more specifics, or maybe the town's IT department, but we will be paying to run a fiber run.
Okay.
Which Tamara is correct. This recently came up, especially with these two locations that are kind of on the outskirts of Walpole, and the fiber infrastructure just is kind of non-existent there. And one of the charges, part of the agreements that we signed with the cable, Verizon, and Comcast, is that they will improve cable and information technology infrastructure throughout town. So this meets the criteria.
Okay. All right. So we'll be actually installing telephone poles and so forth along the perimeter of those properties, or no?
No, I don't. It's like Tamara said, it's running the fiber lines down there. Okay. And we're trying to see if we can work out an agreement with Eversource to go down near the Delaney treatment plant to run a straight shot to Jarvis Farm. So we're not trying to install telephone poles or anything.
Okay. So all cameras will be mounted on existing features in those locations.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. And no other questions. So what's before us is their budget and capital request for $600,559.13. I'll entertain from cable receipts. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I heard two voices at the same time. One was
Give
Denny.
it to Sue and I'll second it.
Okay. All righty. Susan motioned and Denny seconded. And with no other questions, we have a motion for favorable action. Denny,
Yes.
Josette,
Yes.
Allie,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Lucy,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
and myself, 14-0-0 for favorable action. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're on to revisiting Article 2, which is the recognition of Juneteenth Independence Day. We previously debated this article and there were several questions. Jim sent out in his memo answers to most of those questions. Jim, just on a clarification point, the holiday will exist and the municipal offices will be closed. So what's before us is a motion to make it a paid holiday for the employees?
No, it's a motion to amend the personnel bylaws as stated in the motion.
Okay, but by amending the bylaws, it makes it a paid holiday?
It recognizes the holiday, yes.
Okay, alrighty. Any other questions with regards to Article 2 to amend the personnel bylaws? I don't see any hands. I will entertain a motion. Or Denny?
I was just going to put the motion forward for favorable action on Article 2.
Okay. We have a motion. Do I have a second? Is that Andrew or Brian? Brian.
Second.
Okay. So Denny's motion. Brian is the second. There are no other questions. So favorable action. Denny.
Yes.
Josette.
Yes.
Allie.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Jeff.
Same.
Abstain. Kathleen.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Lucy.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
And I am saying no. So we have 12-1-1. Motion carries. Article 3, salary schedule and for hourly and salaried employees not in a union. Once again, Jim provided us a lot of additional information, a comparison of nearby communities and similar communities based on employee positions. I was glad to see that we are not higher than very many and not lower than very many. We're pretty much well positioned with our high and low parts of our scale. Any questions or comments on Article 3? I don't see any. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion on Article 3
Favorable action for Article 3.
by Denny.
Second.
That was Josette.
Yeah.
Okay. No
Well-
other. Susan, yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to, we have the motion in the second. I just wanted to thank Jim for providing all the information that he did. I was unaware until I received Jim's package that the Personnel Board had been given the option of going one of two ways in memorializing a procedure to do employment contracts. And so since my concern each time I've mentioned this has been the procedure rather than the substance of the individual contracts, I think at this point I'm satisfied that the Personnel Board has the wherewithal to come up with a procedure to involve itself in the process when the town administrator and or the Board of Selectmen decide that an employment contract is more appropriate than using the salary schedule. Having said that, I just want to throw it out there that I really like the the way Hingham, the town of Hingham, has approached this. And you know, if anyone out there is listening and cares about my opinion, that would be what I would suggest that they use going forward. But in any event, I thank you very much, Jim, for the very, very thorough job you did in providing the background for this issue. So,
No problem at all.
There being no other questions or comments, we have a motion for favorable action on Article 3. Denny,
Yes.
Josette,
Yes.
Allie,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Steve,
Abstain.
abstain, Susan,
yes,
Jeff,
Abstain.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Lucy,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
and myself as a yes. 1202, the motion carries. Article 4.
Excuse me, Mark,
yes.
before you go on, who put forth the approval and who seconded for Article 3?
Article 3 was Denny, seconded by you.
Oh, sorry.
Article 4, Jim, is no action because it's already built into the budgets.
That is correct.
So the table and salary schedule that we just approved is already accounted for in Article 6 in the budgets.
That is correct.
Therefore, Article 4, we just need a motion for no action because we're not changing anything. I saw
So
Denny's
moved.
hand first. Do I have a
Second.
second by Susan? Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, we have a motion for no action on Article 4. Denny,
Yes.
Josette,
Yes.
Allie,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Susan,
yes,
Jeff,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Lucy,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
and myself. No action, 1400. Article 12. Jim, did you want to go over anything from the auditor's report prior to discussing 12 and 13?
No, it was more or less just me bragging about our excellent finance department. Lisa and Jody and Marilyn was involved in these. I just kind of wanted to give you folks some good news and kind of highlight some of the items. So just more or less was there to share it with you.
Okay. Yeah, I was.
Outstanding job.
Yeah, I was
bragging's
very
appropriate.
Yeah, the one item I kind of recognized, and it kind of falls back on the finance committee, is on page 7, stagnant special revenues and capital projects. It's been brought to my attention several times that the finance committee is supposed to report before every town meeting the status of funds on closed jobs. Is that something that between now and town meeting we could get a spreadsheet together of projects that have officially closed and what's still sitting appropriated for those?
So yes, we've been keeping a running tally of the last, God, I don't know how many town meetings going back, but for some time. So, and we update that once a month. And I'm actually part of my recommendation under Article 5, just as we did, I think we did back in the fall because we skipped over, was to close out some of those capital projects. I think it totals just about $44,000 that will be used towards Article 5 under the fire budget, just to kind of close out their deficit there. But that's very easy, Mark, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, because it's brought to my attention that under the charter, finance committee is supposed to include as part of their report on technically jobs that are physically closed. There's nothing else there, you know, and we set a time window saying, okay, there's been no action on this account for a year. We don't have to worry about any bills coming in last minute. We should report it and then find something to do with it.
And that's what we actually, so like I'll give Carl and the town engineer, there were some projects that Maggie had previously worked on, and he said, listen, close those out. It's a couple $1,000, $4,000.
Yeah.
If I need the money again for this project, I'll come back and request it. So that's easy.
All righty. Thank you. Okay. So as Jim reported, we did make some adjustments to OPEB and stabilization, not fully funding the request in the fall. Jim has come back with new numbers. Jim, these numbers look like they're a little short of what we were looking for from the fall.
They are a little short, but I was mindful of trying to keep more or less a round budget and a round amount in the with these recommendations. If you go along with them, it'll leave $450,000 in the free cash balance. It's up to you if you want to get a little bit more aggressive. I'm just mindful of the fire, budget is probably, even if you take off my 40,000 or so, it's still about 130 or so we're going to have to come up with. And if there's any unknowns with the school department, and I think when I was still writing this, I kept checking the weather. It looked good, but I wasn't sure if snow and ice was going to come and factor into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm looking at, we have currently untouched 460,000 of reserve fund. And I'd rather not push too much free cash into next year when we can turn around and say, yeah, let's close out this year, bringing these accounts back closer to whole from what we had originally proposed in the fall.
Sure.
I believe that would have been moving, let's see, I'm trying to find your list here. You had, where's today's recommendation?
So, Mark, if you like, I can just read it so people, if anybody's watching,
yeah,
this kind of
I just buried the information. That's all.
Sure. So, Article 12 is in relation to the Stabilization Fund, and 13 is in relation to the OPEB. That's the other post-employment benefits.
Right.
The Stabilization Fund article is set to address the Stabilization Fund. Obviously, prior to the pandemic, the town was set to budget $300,000 as part of the general operating budget, specifically for stabilization. Finance committee members may recall that the committee decided to set aside $912,000 from free cash in the fall to address any potential shortfalls that may need to be addressed in the current fiscal year. The balance of the stabilization account is currently $8,328,795. At this time, my recommendation is that the Finance Committee appropriate $175,000 to free cash and stabilization. From free cash into stabilization, I'm sorry. And in regards to the OPEB article, this article is set to address the OPEB. Prior to the pandemic, this town was set to budget $525,000 as part of the general operating budget, specifically for OPEB. As I stated above, $912,000 was rolled forward in free cash. The balance of the OPEB account is currently $5,564,124. The town's recent actuarial study estimated Walpole's unfunded actuarial amount was $46.5 million. Back in September, a joint meeting was held, September of 2018. A joint meeting was held with the Finance Committee, Select Board, and School Committee to agree to a long-term funding plan, which I've attached to this memo. I would note that the group agreed to commit at least 2.5% of the first $2 million of certified free cash each year and place it in OPEB, and up to 7.5% of the remaining free cash, over $2 million, once again in OPEB. Last fall, my initial recommendation was 327 of certified free cash funds to be placed in OPEB. However, the Finance Committee decided to put 250,000 in that fund. So my recommendation is put 287 in free cash, from free cash into OPEB. If we go with those recommendations, it will leave approximately $450,000 in free cash. But it's just a recommendation. So Mark, if you want to be a little bit more aggressive in each of those accounts, I'm fine with that. I picked 175 for stabilization because that will take us just over $8.5 million. So.
Okay, I do see a couple of hands raised. We'll start with Andrew.
Hi, through you, Mark, for Jim, the town administrator. Just to clarify, for Article 12 for stabilization, I had thought we put like over $3 million into the stabilization account last fall.
You did.
Is that right?
Yes, we did. And what prior to the pandemic, we were on a good streak. We were going to put 300,000 budgeted each year as part of the general operating budget. Then the pandemic hit. We were worried. So I zeroed out stabilization. I zeroed out OPEB. So we didn't have a budgeted amount. So that's why I referenced that 300,000, Andrew.
No, I think the 300,000 is correct. I mean, I know you would know because I remember it from past FinCom cycles, and I think it's a testament to the kind of prudence. By the way, I should preface my question by saying, reading the credit rating agency's report and witnessing the February 9th select board meeting where the auditor and consultant spoke before the select board, I just want to also congratulate you and the finance team. I mean, Jody, thank you. Everyone on your team, Jim, has put us in fantastic financial health. And I think the thing I was questioning is in your comments on Article 12, you say that last fall we put 912,000 in free cash, but isn't it like over 3 million?
We set aside 912,000 in free cash to roll forward.
Yeah, his original recommendation was 3.3 million for stabilization and 327 for OPEB, and we pulled it back to get us over 900,000 in case we had to try to balance this year, because at that point the state had only guaranteed us money through Halloween.
Yeah,
and there was no budget going forward from the state, so we were being conservative. Now we're trying to do a little bit of catch up to put some of those numbers back. Okay.
Gotcha. So, but yeah, maybe I'm just not missing something, but we put over 3 million last fall into the stabilization account. Yes. It was around 5 million. And then we put 3 million, whether that came from free cash or from another source. That's how much we added to stabilization last time, which I think was smart. And again, I'm not saying we should draw down stabilization. Reading the credit rating agency's report and seeing that we have almost 9% of our general operating revenues in the stabilization account, it reflects our AA+ bond rating. So I just want to applaud Jim for the financial management of that. But I just want to make sure it's understood that we, rather than doing 300,000, we X'd it up by a factor of 10 in the fall of last year when COVID was, more uncertain. And now with state tax revenues surprising to the upside, my point, and the reason I asked this clarifying question is, we have state tax revenues that are positive to the upside, local receipts that Jim is telling us are looking good from conservative estimation. And we have federal stimulus of, I think, almost $7-8 billion coming to the state as a whole. And just today, I learned from the state that it's $2.5 million or so from the recent stimulus, or American Rescue Plan, I should say, rather, not stimulus. The American Rescue Plan, $2.5 million coming to Walpole. Again, check those numbers by Judy in Maryland. That's just a State House News Service article that I saw this afternoon. My point when I raised this is we're taking 175,000 of this $100 million budget, and we're putting it into a savings account that we just put 3.3 million last year, which is, again, I'm all for prudence. It just seems like we need to recognize the opportunity cost of that 175,000 and just think about that. That's all. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Jim, part of your goal was to get stabilization to be a certain percent of the operating budget, correct?
Yeah, I think a couple of years ago, might have been Mark Sullivan who asked me, what would you like it to be? And I responded by saying 10%. And that's a nice goal to strive for. I never thought we'd be very close to it at this point, but we are.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I know you had mentioned that we had received prison mitigation money recently for the current fiscal year. That's going to close to free cash, correct?
Yes, it will.
And that's 800,000?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And we do have some budgets that are currently seasonal and look to be generating some savings. We're not going to talk about the weather, but there's potential some savings coming our way there.
Don't say it.
Don't jinx us.
Start knocking on wood. I would like to see a bump in these two, knowing that basically free cash is going to get fairly well replenished. I'm just not sure how much we want to set aside going into next year on free cash. Right now, Jim's plan is to have 450 go over to next year. Do we want to bring that down 100, 150? How aggressive do we want to be in building things out? Actually, Mark, did you have a question or comment or?
Well, I just have a comment with regard to OPEB.
Okay.
With this 450 that we have aside right now, you know, again, as a committee, if we decide to keep that available to us until the fall, when we then move it to stabilization or OPEB, I'm fine with that. I'm just wondering, as a committee, do we decide to, and Jim, perhaps you could tell me what the figure is. Let's say we come the fall, do we catch up with OPEB? In other words, do we fund it for the money that we didn't provide it this next year? Or do we just go back to the same formula and proceed that way?
So I'm bouncing between memos, and Andrew, you were right. I just did the math real quick. In the fall, just before the fall town meeting, we had 5,182,382 in there, and then it jumped up to 8,328,795. So that's a difference of 3,146,413.
Yeah, some of that was market growth, but yeah, basically. Yeah. $3 million contribution that we put in.
So $3 million contribution. And I'm sorry, Mark. So just historically looking at, Mark, you asked about OPEB?
I'm just curious, how much have we, you know, we had a formula for OPEB.
Yeah.
Pandemics hit, we pulled money back. About how much money is it short from the formula we agreed to?
So it's not really that much short. It's just depending on how do you figure the budgeting amount now. So I'll give you an example. And in the spring of 2018, we budgeted 350 in there. In the spring of 19, it was 500,000 as part of the general operating budget. And then we cut it down to 0. But we also, in the fall, we bumped it up to 250. And my recommendation here, I don't have that in front of me, but whatever it is, 300 and something thousand.
Yeah, 327 was your original recommendation.
So I think if you got it in last, so we did 250. You know, if you wanted to bring it all the way back up there, Mark, what we should do is put the 500,000 in there.
Yeah, because what you basically have is you have the catch up of basically 77,000, and then a budget of 200,000 is your recommendation. So basically, you're putting in what would have been a $200,000 budget plus the catch up of the free cash money from the fall is how the numbers are kind of working out now. I was looking at possibly bringing that up to a $300,000 budget line, which we'd had originally planned for. You know, put an extra 100,000 on top of your current recommendation, which would give us 350 of free cash going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you folks, and it's one of those. It's just a recommendation, but I'm not like set in stone one way or another. Okay. Mark, would you like me to share my screen just so everybody can see the chart I was just looking at?
Sure.
Oh, with Patrick. Pat, can I share my screen?
Yeah, you should be all set now.
Yeah. Where's that? Sorry. There we go. You folks see that? The various account balances?
Not popping up.
Oh, it's not popping up. Okay. Sorry.
Got to get some more experience with Zoom.
No, I'm not used to doing it on a laptop. So. Let me try this again.
Yeah, so share screen and then click the file that you've opened. Yeah. Hopefully it pops up. There we go. Something up. Yeah. It was moving out top, not went back.
Sorry. Shoot. Oh, here it is. Okay. Too many. You see that? No.
Yep. Now we have it. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So, Mark, that kind of, if that gets back to your question, if you look here, what our historic, I give you this every year because I want to keep a running tally where we were at, where we started, obviously, with the 100,000 with OPEB years ago, almost 10 years ago now. So, so there's where I mentioned the 500 in the spring of 19 and the 350. So we bumped it up. Right now we're only budgeting 100,000. Right. Obviously, I'd love us to get back to the 500 eventually.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, when you came before us originally with the budget, you were hoping to carry 300,000 each, I think, for stabilization and OPEB in the budget.
Yeah. Yeah, because we were at, I think it was 300 for stabilization and 500 for OPEB.
Okay.
No.
Alrighty. Yeah. So basically, what I was looking to do was to get us back to 300,000 of the budget number that you know for OPEB, and then true up the free cash number that we should have put in the fall, which would basically be taking your recommendation and adding 100,000 to it. Okay.
So it would leave us with 350 in
Yes.
free cash?
Yep. And I do see several other hands popping up here, so I want to start reaching out to people. Brian?
So through you, Mark, I was looking for the 2019 OPEB contribution, so thank you, Jim. I would like us to see us be a little more aggressive with OPEB. We were very cautious last year based on what was happening. And as of right now, we've seemed to weather the storm, and I think we should go back to the 500 and continue moving forward. This group, along with the select board, came up with that plan, and I'd hate for us to take a step back and continue being behind. So I'd like us to be back where we thought we might be, and move forward from there. So I'd suggest the 500,000 for this year, for the spring.
Okay. I've got Ally.
Thank you, Mark. I'm somewhat of agreement, and it's a little bit of split of what I'm thinking. I think the OPEB, it's important that we get on track. I mean, we did create this plan, but the stabilization with the 3 million that we put aside in the fall, I'd rather see us go towards the OPEB plan rather than changing that stabilization money.
Okay.
I mean, it's great that we're almost at that 10%, and I think that is a goal that we should continue towards, but right now there's still some budgets that we haven't voted on and such, and I'd rather stick with the stabilization plan and get that one back on track. I mean, the OPEB plan, sorry, and get that back on track.
Okay. Denny?
So Jim, when we hit 10% and knock wood that we don't need to use stabilization, will we just maintain that 10% level, or do you want to keep adding and get that to 10.5, 11, 12? What's the long-term goal on stabilization?
I think my long-term goal personally is to maintain the 10%. I think 10% is, compared to other towns, I think the auditors recommend, they like to see 5 to 7%. I think I'm right on that one. And so I think 10% is a very aggressive goal. I wouldn't be looking to expand on the 10%. And I spoke to the chairwoman of the school committee, Nancy, about this earlier last week. She had asked, well, could we dip into that anyway? And the more we have in stabilization, and she's thinking long-term for the school project, it's only going to help our bond rating and lower the borrowing costs. So I think if we're able to get there by the time they go out, if they pass the override, and by the time we go out and borrow this, it's a year. I think Jody said she thought she was going to borrow in 2023 if it passed. So it'll allow us to continue to build it up and take advantage of the better rates. But who knows what the rates are going to be in 2023?
Yeah. So we're at 9.85% of our 2022 budget now. So if we, would we not put money? I mean, in a sense, I look at this as, we hit that number now. There's a benefit of it. The OPEB, there's some potential growth between now and the fall, if I'm understanding everything correctly. I mean, is there a benefit of hitting 10% now, or get that 175 will almost put us there, if not knock it over the top, right?
Well, no, our operating budget's 100 million. So
yeah, but maybe I was looking at something else then. Thinking.
Well, the other thing too is that if you had 10% of 100 million set aside, and we have 2% growth in our budget, you've got to put away another $2 million you got to put in another 200,000 as your budget keeps growing. So you're going to be
but we can keep that in as we're going. I did quick math and looked up at something quickly, and I pulled the wrong side of the screen. I should have known better. Okay. So forget what I was saying there. I also did have the question on the long-term goal. So we need to get it up to about 10 million and then maintain that level as we go. But we don't need to keep doing the large chunks that we did in the fall. I just wanted to understand the goal and the intention.
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. I got Josette.
Okay, I am kind of betwixt and between on this. I agree with Ally. I believe we should be heading towards and maintaining our OPEB goal as much as it's possible, given the restraints that we may have in the future. My concern is not so much with 22 as with 23. And we don't really have everything coming in this year that we anticipated yet. It may come, it might be slower to rebound than what we anticipate. And I am more leaning, sorry, it's just my crutches, leaning towards Jim's recommendation of I'd rather be cautious and have that surplus in 23 than to come to 23 and find out that we're going to be behind the 8 ball because something we didn't count on, Murphy's Law, has come up that we have no control over. And I'm always on the side of caution, I guess. And Jim is very similar in his mindset as I am. He's very conservative, which I respect and appreciate. And on an aside matter, congratulations to you and Jody and your whole financial team. Those reports were outstanding, and you should be proud.
Thank you, and we are.
So Josette, you're looking to just follow Jim's recommendations and carry the 450
Correct.
to the fall? Okay.
Correct.
All right. Kathleen?
I'll second that, Josette.
I just wanted to, I'm doing my own quick math here. If we're hoping to get stabilization to 10 million, 10 million?
Yeah.
10 million by 23. So that just gives us 4 more opportunities to put money into it. Is that correct? Which would say need
3 to 4.
Yeah.
So we need about 420,000 if we had 4 opportunities to get it to 1 million. Is it that, what potential savings would we see in order to do that? Because if...
Well, I can't speak about what we'll see in the future. I can tell you what I know now. So on the Fields project, I think we were budgeting about a 4.25 percentage point on the interest rate on that one. And it came in at 1.062. And I did my math, and it was only a 15-year borrowing. It saved roughly $1.3 million or so. So
yeah, so that's what's got me thirsty for all of this is, if I would prefer, in general, I'd prefer if we set up a plan for our OPEB, I'd prefer to stick with it. But given that we've got this right on the horizon, this potential borrowing, I wonder if we'd be better if we made a similar plan for our stabilization to get it up to 10 million fairly quickly. Is that
a question for me? I was listening.
Yeah, anybody, but is it even possible? It seems like a pretty big number.
Well, Jim, we have 100,000 in the proposed budget for OPEB, but we have nothing for stabilization, correct?
No, nothing for stabilization.
Okay. But basically our informal agreement when we sat down with the Board of Selectmen and School Committee was a baseline of 100,000 in the budget for OPEB every year, and then the formula for everything beyond that.
Yeah.
Free cash. Okay. And we've got the 100,000 in this year's budget.
We do.
The debt schedule that we have for the coming fiscal year, is that carrying the Fields project at the 1.0 number, or is it carrying it at the 4 point something number?
I think it has it in at the lower amount. So I'm kind of taking as much notes as possible. So if my train of thought on this one, I just did some rough math. So we have 912,000 in free cash. If you go with my recommendation, 175 in stabilization, 287 in OPEB, that takes you down to 450.
Yep.
We know we got a $130,000 problem deficit with the fire department. So that will take free cash down to 320. That leaves 120,000.
Reserve fund, Jim, because we do have 460,000 sitting in reserve fund at this point. So,
oh yeah. I'm just telling you where we stand with free cash.
Yeah.
So that would take it down to 320. So I like a couple of years ago, Mark, you said, let's always try to roll forward at least 200,000.
Yeah.
Just in case money. So so that would leave 320. And like I said, there's some other, the reserve fund and a couple of others, but if anything comes up, it only leaves 120, which I could look at other spots. But if you're thinking you want to keep that 200,000 rolling forward, just keep that number in mind. So we're down to about 120.
Okay. Let's see. So we've got Kathleen. You're all set, Kathleen?
Yeah, but I'm almost all set.
Okay.
So that would lead me to believe it's really not possible for us to plan to get that number, to hit that number by 23.
I never thought we'd be here, Kathleen, honestly. I never thought we'd put aside $3 million in 1 year, and we did. And that was because I think you folks, through your foresight in the select board, said, yeah, we don't know what's coming, and we have this money. We took home, more than half of our free cash and put it aside there. So in free cash, like Mark said, is looking healthy for next year. He mentioned prison funds. We also sold the houses of 27. We sold a house, and then we sold a lot in back of a Walmart off of Moose Hill. So that brought in close to about $1 million that wasn't budgeted for. So right off the top, there's that money there. So almost $2 million. Like Mark said, if we don't touch the reserve fund, that's another close to 500,000. So our free cash off the top of my head is looking healthy for next year.
Yep. And our projected capital budget is generally $2 million if we can afford it, and then OPEB and stabilization on top of that from free cash every fall, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So there is potential, depending on what capital numbers come before us in the fall, to still be able to be aggressive towards OPEB and stabilization from next year's or the end of this year's certified free cash.
So big picture, 1.5. If we bring it up to at least the 175 to bring stabilization up to $8.5 million, I wouldn't say it's out of the realm of possibility to be there by 23. And I think that would be a good goal to strive for.
Yeah.
And we're also being relatively conservative, but there is market growth on that money too, right, Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Not as much now as it was a few years ago, but
right. Yeah, because we're trying to protect that number and not have it bail out on us if we put it all in stocks and it tanks.
Yeah, I mean, the way Maryland had set this up, it's in a very conservative account, but I know when the stock market this time last year was all over the place, it was down a few $100,000. It bounced back in each account, but
yeah.
So
okay. Let's see. I kind of lost track of where we are now here.
I think you got Sue.
Yeah. Actually, Andrew, did I get to you?
He came back up after some
earlier on this topic.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Susan, then back to Allie.
Through you, Mark. I just wanted to say that I agree with what Josette said earlier, that I think I'd like to be stick with the recommended amount this time round, knowing that in fall we can adjust. But I'm one of those people who's still kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop and not quite confident that we're the crisis is behind us. So once it goes into OPEB, it's gone, and that's. I'm always mindful of that. And I think we should try to get back on track when we can, but these are very strange times. So I would be in favor of sticking with the recommendation for the moment.
Okay. Allie?
Thank you, Mark. I just had a quick question. When we're talking about capital budget, There were things that were cut last year. Did we bring any of those items back in? I can't recall off the top of my head.
We're not doing capital budget on the spring. We're going to wait till next fall. So anything that we did not do last fall will come up this coming fall.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that answered the question. I mean, these accounts are important. It's important that we, you know, put money in, and it is still, we're not out of the storm yet. We don't know what's going to be happening, but it just makes you think that a lot of the free cash ends up being towards capital budget improvements, and just wondering what was cut. And those projects usually still need to get done. Usually it's a lot of improvements to our buildings and different things.
A lot of it's road improvements, Ally. And, you know, Rick had come forward a couple of weeks ago and said, you know, we're falling behind in our roads improvements. State's only given us 775 average each year. He said, if you give me $6 million, I could, if you borrow for that, it will take care of our roads for a long time to come. And I said, put together a proposal and maybe we'll discuss it, you know, once we get through all of this. But so you're right, Ally, some projects have been cut. Roads come to mind, you know, you can only go so far.
Yeah. So our band borrowing, we had bumped up to 400,000, then we cut it back down to 200,000. So yeah, so the roads only got $1 million last year instead of $1.2 million, maybe $1.3 million that we were hoping to put into it because of COVID primarily. Jim, in the budget forecast, were we still carrying bond borrowing for roads at 200 a cycle?
I don't recall if it was 200 or 400. Jody, do you know off the top of your head? I know she's on this call.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe it was 200.
Okay.
This in FY at the last fall town meeting. The year before, I believe it was 400,000.
Right, but in your debt budget projections, are we looking to add 200 every cycle, or are we looking to bump that up in the debt budget projections?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it's higher. I believe it's higher than the 200.
Okay. All right, so we kind of have that somewhat built in, but okay. All right.
Yep, Mark and then Andrew.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, Mark.
Yes, I just have a question for Jim. Getting back to what Kathleen was talking about and having the stabilization fund, and again, who knows what the interest rates will do. Do you see any advantage in zeroing out OPEB and putting that money into the stabilization fund now to get us close to the 10? And then after the big bond goes through, assuming we approve the school, we then we zero out stabilization and throw all the money that we didn't put in before into OPEB.
No, and Jody, feel free to jump in here, but one of the questions that she's texting me, no, please. One of the questions that never came up before 2 or 3 years ago was, well, where do you stand with OPEB? Now it's a regular question every time we go out to borrow, and they factor that in as part of our rating. So I think it would backfire on us, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
Can I jump in for a second, Mark, through you?
Yes.
Just want to point out that having funds in stabilization and OPEB is important to the rating agencies. So, you know, right now we're in a good place, and, you know, contributing to OPEB is going to look better and better. And of course, it's always good to contribute to stabilization. So I think, you know, you have to look at it that way, that we can benefit from both.
Okay.
Mark, just to jump on, I did the math on your question here. You had originally asked me where are we at. If we go forward with my recommendation, we'll be at 637 putting into OPEB by the time this fiscal year is over. So if you go back to the 500 from last year that was cut and the money, so we're close if we go forward with this. You know, if you wanted to make that an even 300,000 instead of the 287, I'd be fine with that too. I just picked that number to keep it at 450, but or there's flexibility there if that's what you're looking for.
Yep. Alrighty. Andrew?
Hi. Don't want to belabor this point, but I think this is just, it is important stuff. So I just want to make a quick point before going into an analogy. My point about interest rates. So there's diminishing marginal returns to us improving our stabilization cash fund or OPEB fund, both because we have it's diminishing marginal returns to that for two reasons. One, we have the second highest credit rating, but also, and this is frankly the main reason we saved a lot on our borrowing costs, is that interest rates are rock bottom. I mean, interest rates are really low. So like, because of low interest rates, having an ever better credit rating with, 10+% of operating budget in our stabilization fund is, the difference between having 10% versus having 8.9, which is where we are now, is minimal. Versus the flip side is OPEB is a real actuarial liability of $46 million over the next indefinite time period, right? It's an indefinite time period. So that balance makes me think we should invest much more in the OPEB catch-up than the stabilization, which we just sunk $3 million into. So just a quick analogy, and again, household analogies with government finances are extremely fraught and often misleading, but let's just say Walpole's like a household. The way I see it is OPEB is like paying down your mortgage, right? You have this liability, the more paying down extra principal, I should say, rather. Adding more with waiving aside prepayment penalties. It's like paying down more on your mortgage principal, OPEB, versus adding to your stabilization fund is like the equivalent of a household just adding more in a cash savings account, bank account, right? But my point is that those are not the only two dials, because there's a third option in terms of our own local receipt projections, our own operating budgets, which is the equivalent of like investing in home maintenance, right? Improving your garage or repaving your driveway or whatever. So the reason I bring up this analogy is of the balance between investing more in the OPEB to catch up or stabilization, I think it's pretty clear. I didn't say this. I should have been clearer earlier. It's pretty clear to really invest in OPEB catch up, in my opinion. In other words, like move the stabilization money. We just put $3 million in last fall. Move that 175 or whatever. Move that. Let's catch up with OPEB. Let's make some progress on OPEB. But I bring up the whole household analogy with the investing in your home, because the other untouched truth here is we like to think of free cash or these other funds as one-time money, but it's a little fungible. Like we have 450,000 or let's say 320,000 per Jim's point. The fire department's over 130 grand. So say we have 320,000 and rolled over free cash. We have 460,000 in the FinCom's reserve fund, right? We have 800,000 in expected free cash in the future because of prison mitigation. We have the $2.5 million I mentioned from the American Rescue Plan coming to Walpole specifically. And then we're saying, okay, on top of that, let's put 175 even more in our super conservative stabilization fund. And I think we're getting to a breaking point here where, we're making extremely conservative, very prudent decisions. And so I want to applaud everyone, but I think it's worth weighing in on some of the operating budget versus capital budget trade-offs we face. If we're always going to be expecting huge free cash balances every fall, that means we're really biasing our spending towards capital projects versus operating budgets. So I'm fine with whatever this committee suggests. I think this is all a cherry on top. Ultimately, we're doing great. Jody and Lisa and Jim are doing awesome either way. But I would be in favor of more OPEB catch-up and less stabilization. And eventually, let's start a conversation about changing those local receipt projections so we have better operating budgets for town services.
Denny's hand's up.
Yeah, we've gotten where we are by not playing in fudging numbers or adjusting numbers. The conservative approach has worked very well. Local receipts are based off of realistic estimates that can be changed very quickly off of the realities that change in this world. I'd rather not see us change that model. It's worked very well I've been doing this, been on and off this committee for the last 14 years. And, when I first came on board, things were just coming into a recovery phase. And we've done a great job through this. I've lived in this town for most of my 48 years of life. We didn't build buildings for 60 years or something ridiculous number like that during that time. We've been able to pull off a lot in the last decade without having to do overrides or, anything significant beyond what we did 10 years ago for the schools. we've had a great economic plan off of these same modeling and approaches. I'd like to see us continue that and not play with numbers and estimates to go into that operating budget. We can always adjust a year later. I'd rather just a year later than a year early. It's worked well for the last 10 years. That's my opinion. Andrew has his. I just want to make sure I got my 2 cents in on there from now.
Okay. Let's see. I don't see any other hands raised. So what's before us is starting with Article 12, which is stabilization. The recommendation by town administration is $175,000 from free cash to stabilization. I will entertain any motion you wish to put forward. First come, first serve.
I'll put forward the motion as recommended by the town administrator, and I'm just
Second,
Seconded by Susan. Alrighty. So we have a motion and a second.
for Article 12, right?
Article
we're
12.
doing them separate at a time.
Yes,
One at a time.
separately, because each one has a dollar amount attached to it from free cash.
Yep.
Okay. So this is a motion for 175,000 from free cash. We have a motion for favorable action that's been made and seconded. In favor, Denny,
Yes.
Josette,
Yes.
Ally,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Susan,
yes,
Jeff,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Lucy,
Yes.
Brian,
No.
Doug,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. Motion carries 13-1-0. Alrighty. Mark, did you have a different amount in mind that you were concerned about, or? Sorry,
Brian.
Sorry, Brian.
Yes, I'd rather that of money been put toward OPEB.
Okay, all right. Sometimes it comes up at town meeting. Alrighty. Next up is Article 13. The town administrator's recommendation is $287,000 from free cash. I'm open to any motions, increased, decreased, or that one. Susan?
I move for the recommended amount into OPEB.
Okay,
I'll second it.
alrighty. Seconded by Denny, motion by Susan. Okay, what's before us is a recommendation for favorable action on $287,000 from free cash to OPEB. Denny,
Yes.
Josette,
Yes.
Ally,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes,
Steve,
Yes.
Jeff,
No.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Lucy,
Yes.
Brian,
No.
Doug,
No.
Mark,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
and myself a no. It is 1, 2, 3, 4,
10-0-4. 10-4-0.
10-4-0. Motion carries. On the nose, were you looking to increase the amount?
Yes.
Yes.
Increase take from free cash.
Gotcha. As was my idea. Choice also. Okay.
All right, just a minute. So
Yep.
we got Mark, Steve, Jeff, and who else voted no?
Doug.
Brian.
Brian. Okay, thank you.
But that was Doug and not Steve, I think.
Oh, yes, correct.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Okay. Alrighty. Update for for this coming Thursday is the school budget, Tri-County and Norfolk Aggie, and a relook at, was it Veterans Agent budget, Jim?
Animal control.
Animal control, okay. Yeah, so there'll be a couple of tweaks on the final budget numbers, but we'll have our, hopefully, Article 6 debated on Thursday and voted in full after we hear the updated school presentation and animal control adjustment. And we'll also go through, if we need to, we'll go through the details of the revenue sources and get the background from Jody and Jim as to their thinking and how conservative and how aggressive they were in certain categories.
So just to piggyback on what Mark said, so what I'll have for you folks on Thursday night is we'll obviously discuss the school budgets, talk about the animal control, public safety budgets, the change there. And then I have the total motion that we need as the main motion on town meeting floor. So go through basically that shows where all the revenue is coming from. So if you have any questions, that's the time to take it up. So just let me know. And if something jumps to mind ahead of time, that's always beneficial. So Jody and I are prepared. So.
Okay. Alrighty.
In terms of future meetings, to remark, so after Thursday, is next meeting April 5th?
Next meeting is April 5th to go over the current year budget.
Okay.
Current year water and sewer, potential shortfalls, snow and ice budget, shortfalls potentially, and Articles 17, 18, and 19, which are citizens petitions. We'll give you an update on the findings from town council with regards to a question on Article 17 on Thursday, and I'll give you an update on Article 20 on some information that's come to light on Thursday also.
So Mark, just to talk about article, the South Walpole parking article, I did finally hear back from council. She got me a revised opinion today. Okay. The issues that the planning board chair did identified are legitimate, and she suggested that they open the meeting and continue it till a later date until if the petitioner wants to address some of those. So I'll share the legal opinion with you folks. I've shared it with the planning board chair and vice chair, along with Cindy Hogue and Jack Wiley, the two petitioners. So they're aware of it. I haven't had a chance to talk to them about it yet because it was the end of the day, but they haven't.
Okay. Yeah. So basically after Thursday, we're going to have potentially a decent amount of time off until we really can nail down what's happening with the current year finances and the planning board public hearings. Okay. Yes, Kathleen.
I just have two things. One, Jim, I know it's been said, but I really appreciated the work you put into the packet that you gave us because I felt prepared for what we were going to face tonight. 39 pages is a lot to read, but it's even more to write. So I appreciate that.
I didn't want to, it wasn't my intent to overwhelm you guys, but it's a lot of info. So, yeah.
But Mark, I had a question for you procedurally.
Sure.
I appreciated hearing what the no votes were thinking. And we don't do that very often. And I'm wondering what your policy is on that. Do we only do it when it's a dollar figure or because sometimes I feel like it comes out in discussion and I know where it's going, but other times I'm caught off guard when I hear a no, and I would like to be able to defend both sides or at least understand what the no's are saying.
Yeah, it's primarily in preparation of town meeting because at town meeting, these items seem to be hot ticket items, stabilization and OPEB. And people say, well, why'd you vote no? We're putting money away. It says, yeah, we wanted to do more. Or we wanted to take the money from here and put it over there. So it's just for purposes of town meeting discussion, having a couple of notes ahead of time. So he's like, what did we say 2 months ago? It's like, yeah. Or have to go back and contact these people and says, can you refresh my memory as to, why you chose no?
Sure, I understand that. So, but what I'm hearing you say is it's only on issues where you think there may be a discussion as opposed to across the board.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good point, Kathleen.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's a standalone no, it's like, okay, it's not likely to get challenged. But when you get to the point of stabilization and OPEB are always hot topics, any dissenting opinions, somebody's going to ask the question on those. And they're just the people who says, I don't care if it was 14-1. What did the one person say they didn't like about it? Because it happens to deal with OPEB and stabilization.
And of course, there are those people who like to see some dissent within the ranks so that then, as an indication that we're actually debating things,
yes,
which we know we are in fact debating.
Quite extensively, yes. Okay. Josette, yes.
Jim, a question for you, not to go into a lot of great detail because we are on TV, but going through the two reports that were enclosed within the packet, one made reference to internet security. And I am rationalizing that Mike is probably would be on top of that. Can you give kind of a broad overview?
Sure. Are you referencing what Roselli and Clark put in there?
Yes.
No,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's for the year ending June 30th, 2019. So when we get this, usually they don't do the report until the year is completed, the books are closed out, and then they go through. So it's usually about year and a half old by the time we actually get this thing. So when we first initially see this, we're able to review the management letter. We know that which items are coming up. Marilyn, Jody, and now Marilyn and Lisa, Jody and Lisa always do an excellent job kind of reviewing those things. So it's not like a surprise if they call us out for, I don't know, carrying forward too much in the capital funds or not closing out old capital. We know that's coming. They always have to identify a few new things that they want us working on, but that's been something that's been on Mike's, Mike has been focused on. Actually, about 2 weeks ago, he did an emergency shutdown something came through from the police that was a threat, and it was like 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, and everybody was still working at town hall, but we dealt with it because he thought it was an immediate threat. He just didn't want to wait until the nighttime to address. So he does a great job staying on top of that. He's only it's him and Doug upstairs. So for the whole entire town, they do a great job. And this kind of gets back to, I think Jeff made the point, and a couple of other people. We should probably look into expanding that for sure. And I'm all for that, even if it helps the police department. And, everybody's on social media at one point or another. We're going to need to have a real strong arm in social media, more or less.
Well, you know that the average person has all these crank calls telling you that you've ordered this or somebody has ordered that. And in a town basis, you're more open to things coming in. So I would rationalize, because of knowing Mike, that he would be on top of it. But going forward, it's definitely something to be concerned about and to probably have a few more people on deck, as you're saying.
For sure.
But I wanted a broad view. I didn't want to go into any detail because of the media that we're using. So thank you.
Jim, any final comments, or we?
No, I'm pleased that we got through so many articles tonight. I was stressing a little bit, so thank you.
Okay, I'll send you the updated vote sheet so you can include it in Thursday's package. So everybody knows where we stand. And what I did on the last copy I sent to Jim was I had our tentative vote dates as to anything that wasn't voted. You'll see a date next to it, so you know when you can expect it on the agenda. So yeah, basically the only thing coming up is Article 6 on Thursday, and then everything else will be April 5th. So there being nothing else before us, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by Denny, seconded by Kathleen, and we'll call the roll. Alrighty, and seconded by Kathleen. Denny.
Yes.
Josette.
Yes.
Allie.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Kathleen.
Yes.
Lucy.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
And myself. 14-0-0. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jim.
Good call.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks.